Early warning signs your body's magnesium levels are dangerously low. Read before it's too late. Minerals are very important as well as the vitamins, and mineral deficiency can cause some serious health problems. The human body has about 2 ounces of magnesium, which is mostly accumulated in the teeth and bones, but there are small quantities in the heart and brain, even in the blood. We can say that every single cell in our body needs magnesium to function properly. This mineral is responsible for over 300 metabolic functions in the body. Although this mineral is very important, the USDA has estimated that almost 1/2 of the Americans are magnesium deficient. Furthermore, because of the modern and stressful lifestyle, our body is constantly under physical and mental stress, which is why it uses magnesium more and faster than the amount we consume every day. The daily magnesium intake should be 500 to 1000 megagrams a day. Magnesium deficiency can cause osteoporosis, chronic fatigue, insomnia, facial twitches, leg cramps, anxiety, irritability, migraines, depression, and heart disease. Minerals are very important as well as the vitamins, and mineral deficiency can cause some serious health problems. One of the first signs of magnesium deficiency is often fatigue. You may notice muscle spasms, weakness or stiffness as well. Loss of appetite and nausea are other common symptoms in the early stages. However, you may not notice any symptoms at all in the beginning. A magnesium deficiency can be hard to diagnose. Many of the initial symptoms could indicate a wide variety of other health issues. Proper magnesium intake improves the oxygen level in the brain, and that is why it can help people who suffer from Alzheimer's. It is also linked with Parkinson's tremors, as some studies have shown that people with this disease have a lower level of magnesium in the brain. Magnesium deficiency is also linked with some chronic diseases like metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. Magnesium for your body and mind. In order to have proper magnesium intake, you need to consume foods rich in magnesium like whole grains, fish, leafy green vegetables, spinach and kale, legumes, dark chocolate, nuts, avocados and different kinds of seeds like flax, millet, sunflower, chia and pumpkin. Also, you can take a quality supplement that contains magnesium cofactors glycinate, taurinate, orotate, and malate, because they are more easily absorbed than other forms. Here's what they can do for you. Magnesium glycinate for mind. It controls irritability, anxiety, concentration, insomnia, and hysteria, reduces numbness and depression, has laxative effects. It can help with long-term deficiencies. It calms and relaxes your body. Magnesium orotate for body improves athletic abilities, improves heart function. Magnesium malate for muscles, helps in treating fibromyalgia, calms muscle fatigue, relieves PMSA symptoms, and headaches. It improves digestion, so should be taken with meals, boosts energy level. Magnesium taurinate for the heart, improves heart function, prevents migraines, reduces heart palpitations and arrhythmias. You should know also that magnesium supplements should contain B6, as it improves the absorption of magnesium. The solution I Trust Mag Key is the best choice because it contains all 4 of the essential magnesium cofactors, including B6. It is especially beneficial for brain, muscles, and heart. Take this supplement to keep your heart healthy, or if you have problems with a major stress.